Introduction: The Power of Atomic Habits. James Clear begins Atomic Habits by explaining that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just as money grows through compound interest, small, consistent deposits that add up over time, so do our habits. They are the tiny, seemingly insignificant actions we repeat daily that shape our future. Habits compound both positively and negatively. While good habits compound to build success, bad habits compound to create problems, and sometimes even crises, over time. Clear introduces the idea that we often dismiss small changes because they don't seem to matter much in the moment. However, if we improve by just 1% each day, those small improvements compound over time to create massive changes. Conversely, if we get worse by 1% each day, we move further from our goals. This is the crux of Atomic Habits: focus on making small, consistent improvements, and the cumulative effect will result in significant, lasting change. To demonstrate this concept, Clear shares the story of the British cycling team, which had been one of the worst performing teams in the world for over a century. Under the leadership of Dave Brailsford, the team adopted a philosophy of marginal gains, focusing on improving every tiny aspect of cycling by just 1%. They optimized everything from the aerodynamics of the bicycles to the design of the cyclists' uniforms, even looking at the pillowcases they slept on. These seemingly minor changes led to a dramatic transformation. The British cycling team went on to win several Olympic gold medals and dominate the Tour de France. This example illustrates how small, incremental improvements can yield extraordinary results over time. Clear's core argument is that focusing on systems, our processes, routines, and habits, rather than specific goals is the key to success. Goals are about the outcomes we want, but systems are about the processes that lead to those outcomes. While goals provide direction, systems are what drive progress. For example, instead of focusing on the goal of writing a book, focus on the system of writing 500 words every day. The book will eventually get written, but only if the system is in place. This shift in focus, from goals to systems, is fundamental to Clear's approach to habit formation. By prioritizing systems, we can create a sustainable path to success that isn't reliant on achieving specific milestones. It also helps us avoid the all-too-common yo-yo effect that comes with goal setting, achieving a goal, only to revert back to old habits once the goal is reached. Systems provide a consistent framework for ongoing improvement, regardless of the outcome. The nature of habits: why small changes matter. Clear delves into the nature of habits, explaining why small changes matter more than we realize. He begins by breaking down the anatomy of a habit into 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. This is known as the habit loop, and understanding it is key to creating and sustaining habits. Cue: this is the trigger that initiates a behavior. It could be a time of day, a specific location, an emotional state, or an action. For example, the sound of your alarm clock might be the cue to wake up and start your morning routine. Craving: this is the motivational force behind the habit. The cue triggers a craving, which creates a desire to engage in the behavior. For example, hearing the alarm clock creates a craving for coffee, leading you to get out of bed. Response: this is the actual behavior or habit you perform. It's the action you take in response to the craving. In this example, your response might be to go to the kitchen and brew a cup of coffee. Reward: this is the outcome of the behavior, which reinforces the habit loop. The reward is what satisfies the craving and makes it more likely that you will repeat the behavior in the future. In this case, the reward might be the pleasure of drinking the coffee and feeling more awake. Clear explains that these 4 stages are present in every habit, whether it's a good habit like exercising or a bad habit like smoking. The key to changing a habit is to manipulate one or more of these stages. For example, if you want to break a bad habit, you can try to remove the cue or make the reward less satisfying. If you want to build a good habit, you can make the cue more obvious and the reward more appealing. Clear also discusses the concept of habit stacking, a technique that can be used to build new habits by linking them to existing ones. For example, if you already have a habit of brushing your teeth every morning, you can stack a new habit on top of it, such as meditating for 5 minutes after brushing your teeth. Habit stacking leverages the cue from the existing habit to initiate the new behavior, making it easier to remember and perform consistently. In addition to habit stacking, Clear emphasizes the importance of environment design in habit formation. Our environment often cues our behaviors, and by shaping our surroundings to support good habits and discourage bad ones, we can make it easier to stick to the behaviors we want to build. For example, if you want to eat healthier, you can design your kitchen in a way that makes healthy food more accessible and visible, while keeping junk food out of sight. The central message in this section is that small changes, when compounded over time, lead to significant outcomes. The small actions we take each day might seem insignificant on their own, but when repeated consistently, they create a powerful momentum that can lead to profound changes in our lives. The 4 laws of behavior change, a deeper dive. Clear introduces the 4 laws of behavior change, which serve as a framework for building good habits and breaking bad ones. These laws are based on the 4 stages of the habit loop: cue, craving, response, reward, and provide actionable strategies for habit formation. First law, make it obvious. The first law of behavior change is to make the cue for your habit obvious. This means designing your environment and routines in such a way that the cues for your habits are easy to notice and hard to ignore. Clear emphasizes that our environment plays a significant role in shaping our behavior, often more than our willpower or motivation. Clear suggests using implementation intentions to make your habits more obvious. An implementation intention is a plan that specifies when and where you will perform a specific habit. For example, instead of saying, "I want to read more," you would say, "I will read for 20 minutes in the living room after dinner every night." By being specific about when and where you will perform the habit, you create a clear cue that triggers the behavior. In addition to implementation intentions, Clear introduces the concept of habit tracking as a way to make the cues for your habits more obvious. Habit tracking involves keeping a visual record of your progress, such as marking off each day you complete a habit on a calendar. This not only serves as a reminder to perform the habit but also provides a sense of satisfaction as you see your progress build over time. Clear also discusses the power of context-dependent memory, which is the idea that we are more likely to remember a behavior if we perform it in the same context or environment each time. For example, if you always study in the same location, the context itself becomes a cue for studying. This is why it's important to associate specific habits with specific environments. If you want to build a reading habit, choose a particular chair or room where you will always read. Over time, simply entering that space will cue the reading habit. However, it's not just about adding cues for good habits, it's also about removing cues for bad habits. Clear explains that if you want to break a bad habit, one of the most effective strategies is to eliminate the cues that trigger it. For example, if you're trying to stop watching so much television, you could rearrange your living room so that the TV is less prominent, or you could hide the remote control in a drawer so it's not as easy to access. By making the cue less obvious, you reduce the likelihood of performing the bad habit. The takeaway from the first law is that by carefully designing your environment and routines, you can make the cues for your habits more obvious and easier to follow through on. This reduces the reliance on willpower and makes it more likely that you will perform the habit consistently. Second law, make it attractive. The second law of behavior change is to make the habit attractive. This means increasing the appeal of the behavior so that you are more motivated to engage in it. Habits are driven by cravings, and the more attractive the habit is, the more likely you are to perform it. Clear explains that one of the reasons bad habits are so persistent is that they often provide immediate gratification, while the rewards of good habits are often delayed. For example, smoking provides an immediate sense of relaxation, while the health benefits of quitting smoking are not felt until much later. To overcome this, Clear suggests finding ways to make good habits more immediately satisfying and bad habits less so. One technique Clear introduces is temptation bundling, which involves pairing a behavior you want to do with a behavior you need to do. For example, if you want to build a habit of exercising, you could bundle it with something you enjoy, like listening to your favorite podcast or watching a TV show. You only allow yourself to engage in the enjoyable activity while you're performing the habit, which makes the habit more attractive and increases the likelihood that you will stick with it. Clear also discusses the role of social influence in making habits more attractive. We are social creatures, and we tend to mimic the behaviors of those around us. By surrounding yourself with people who already engage in the habit you want to build, you increase the attractiveness of the behavior. For example, if you want to start running, joining a running group can make the habit more appealing because you're part of a community that values and supports the behavior. This social reinforcement makes it easier to stick to the habit, as you're motivated by both the desire to fit in and the positive feedback from the group. In addition to social influence, Clear emphasizes the importance of changing your mindset to make habits more attractive. Instead of viewing a habit as a chore, try to reframe it in a positive light. For example, instead of thinking of exercise as something you have to do, think of it as something you get to do, a way to improve your health and well-being. By focusing on the benefits of the habit and associating it with positive emotions, you make it more attractive and increase your motivation to perform it. The key takeaway from the second law is that by making habits more attractive, you can increase your motivation to perform them. Whether through temptation bundling, social influence, or reframing your mindset, the goal is to create a positive association with the habit that makes it more appealing and easier to stick with. Third law, make it easy. The third law of behavior change is to make the habit easy. Clear argues that the easier a habit is to perform, the more likely it is to be repeated. This law is based on the idea that our brains are wired to conserve energy and avoid effort, so if a habit requires too much effort, we are less likely to stick with it. Clear introduces the 2-minute rule, which states that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to complete. The idea is to make the habit so simple that it's impossible to fail. For example, if your goal is to start meditating, the habit could be as simple as sitting down for 2 minutes each morning. If your goal is to start running, the habit could be putting on your running shoes and stepping outside. The point is to reduce the barrier to entry so that starting the habit is effortless. Once the habit is initiated, Clear explains that it often naturally extends beyond the 2 minutes. For example, once you put on your running shoes and stepped outside, you're likely to continue running for longer than 2 minutes. The key is to focus on showing up and starting the habit, rather than worrying about how much you accomplish at first. Clear also discusses the importance of reducing friction in habit formation. Friction refers to any obstacles or barriers that make a habit more difficult to perform. By reducing friction, you make the habit easier to start and maintain. For example, if you want to practice the guitar more often, you could reduce friction by keeping your guitar in a place where it's easily accessible, rather than hidden away in a closet. Similarly, if you want to eat healthier, you could prepare meals in advance so that healthy food is readily available when you're hungry. In addition to reducing friction, Clear introduces the concept of environmental design as a way to make habits easier. This involves shaping your environment to support the behaviors you want to build and discourage the behaviors you want to break. For example, if you want to spend less time on social media, you could delete the apps from your phone or use website blockers to limit your access. By making it more difficult to engage in the bad habit, you reduce the likelihood of performing it. The key takeaway from the third law is that by making habits easier to perform, you increase the likelihood of sticking with them. Whether through the 2-minute rule, reducing friction, or designing your environment, the goal is to lower the barriers to entry and make the habit as effortless as possible. Fourth law, make it satisfying. The final law of behavior change is to make the habit satisfying. Clear explains that behaviors are more likely to be repeated when they are followed by a satisfying outcome. This law is based on the principle of reinforcement. Habits are strengthened by the rewards they produce. One of the challenges with building good habits is that the rewards are often delayed. For example, the benefits of eating healthy or saving money might not be felt for months or even years. In contrast, bad habits often provide immediate gratification, which makes them more attractive in the short term. To overcome this, Clear suggests finding ways to make good habits immediately satisfying. One technique is habit tracking, which provides a visual representation of your progress. For example, you could use a calendar to mark off each day that you complete a habit, creating a streak of consecutive days. The satisfaction of seeing the streak grow provides an immediate reward for completing the habit, even if the long-term benefits are still far off. This technique leverages the human desire to maintain consistency. Once you've built up a streak, you're less likely to want to break it. Clear also discusses the importance of immediate rewards for habit formation. For example, if your goal is to exercise more, you could reward yourself with a relaxing bath or a healthy treat after each workout. The key is to find a reward that is satisfying enough to reinforce the behavior without undermining the long-term goal. For instance, rewarding yourself with junk food after a workout might provide immediate satisfaction, but it would be counterproductive to the overall goal of improving your health. In addition to providing rewards for good habits, Clear suggests introducing immediate consequences for bad habits. For example, you could create an accountability system where you have to pay a friend a certain amount of money every time you skip a habit you're trying to build. The immediate cost of skipping the habit creates a negative consequence that makes it less likely you will repeat the behavior. The key takeaway from the fourth law is that by making habits immediately satisfying, you increase the likelihood of repeating them. Whether through habit tracking, immediate rewards, or introducing consequences, the goal is to create a positive feedback loop that reinforces the behavior and makes it more likely to stick. The power of identity, shaping your habits around who you want to be. One of the most profound ideas in Atomic Habits is the concept of identity-based habits. Clear argues that the key to long-term habit change is to focus on becoming the type of person who embodies the habits you want to build, rather than focusing solely on the outcomes you want to achieve. Clear explains that most people approach habit change by focusing on the outcome, such as losing weight, writing a book, or running a marathon. While these goals are important, they don't necessarily lead to lasting behavior change because they are focused on what you want to achieve, not who you want to become. Instead of setting outcome-based goals, Clear suggests shifting your focus to identity-based goals. For example, instead of setting a goal to lose 20 pounds, focus on becoming the type of person who makes healthy choices and exercises regularly. Instead of setting a goal to write a book, focus on becoming the type of person who writes every day. By focusing on identity, you align your habits with your sense of self, which makes them more sustainable over the long term. Clear introduces the idea that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Each time you perform a habit, you are casting a vote for your identity. For example, every time you go to the gym, you are casting a vote for being a healthy and fit person. Every time you sit down to write, you are casting a vote for being a writer. Over time, these votes accumulate and reinforce your sense of identity. Clear emphasizes that identity-based habits are more powerful because they are rooted in your sense of self. When you identify as a healthy person, for example, making healthy choices becomes part of who you are, rather than something you have to force yourself to do. This shift in mindset makes it easier to sustain habits over the long term because they are aligned with your core values and beliefs. Clear provides several examples of identity-based habits in action. For instance, he tells the story of a woman who wanted to quit smoking. Instead of saying, "I'm trying to quit smoking," she started saying, "I'm not a smoker." This subtle shift in language reinforced her new identity and made it easier for her to resist the temptation to smoke. The key takeaway from this section is that identity is the foundation of habit change. By focusing on becoming the type of person who embodies the habits you want to build, you create a sustainable framework for long-term success. Every action you take is a step toward becoming the person you want to be, and over time, these actions accumulate to form your identity. The plateau of latent potential, embracing patience and persistence. One of the most frustrating aspects of building new habits is the feeling that you're not making progress, even though you're putting in consistent effort. Clear introduces the concept of the plateau of latent potential to explain why this happens. The plateau of latent potential refers to the period of time when you're putting in effort but not yet seeing any noticeable results. This can be incredibly discouraging because it feels like your work is not paying off. However, Clear explains that this period of apparent stagnation is actually a crucial part of the habit-building process. Clear uses the analogy of an ice cube to illustrate this concept. Imagine a room that is slowly being heated from 25 degrees to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. For a long time, nothing happens, the ice cube remains frozen. But once the temperature reaches 32 degrees, the ice begins to melt. The earlier increments in temperature weren't wasted, they were necessary to reach the tipping point where change becomes visible. This is how habits work. You might not see immediate results from your efforts, but that doesn't mean you aren't making progress. Every repetition of a habit is like adding another degree of heat, slowly bringing you closer to the tipping point where change becomes visible. Clear encourages readers to embrace the concept of delayed gratification and to remain patient, even when progress seems slow. The key is to trust that your efforts are compounding over time, even if the results are not immediately apparent. By sticking with your habits through the plateau of latent potential, you will eventually reach a breakthrough point where the change becomes visible and significant. Clear shares several examples of individuals who experienced the plateau of latent potential before achieving success. For instance, he tells the story of bamboo, which grows underground for years, before suddenly shooting up to great heights. The growth that appears to happen overnight is actually the result of years of unseen progress beneath the surface. The key takeaway from this section is that patience and persistence are essential for habit change. Progress is often invisible in the early stages, but if you stick with your habits, you will eventually see the results of your efforts. The plateau of latent potential is a natural part of the process, and by embracing it, you can avoid the frustration that leads many people to give up on their goals prematurely. Advanced Habit Strategies, Mastering the Art of Habit Formation. As the book progresses, Clear introduces more advanced strategies for habit formation. These strategies are designed to help you refine and master your habits, ensuring that they are sustainable over the long term. One of these strategies is habit shaping, which involves gradually improving your habits over time. Clear explains that it's often easier to start with a small, manageable version of a habit and then gradually scale it up as you become more comfortable with the behavior. For example, if your goal is to meditate for 30 minutes a day, you might start by meditating for just 2 minutes and then gradually increase the duration as the habit becomes more ingrained. Clear also introduces the concept of habit segmentation, which involves breaking a larger habit into smaller, more manageable pieces. For example, if your goal is to write a book, you might break the habit into smaller segments, such as writing for 10 minutes a day or completing 1 page at a time. By focusing on smaller segments of the habit, you make the task less overwhelming and increase the likelihood of sticking with it. Another advanced strategy is the Goldilocks rule, which states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. This means that the task is not too easy and not too hard, it's just right. If a task is too easy, it becomes boring, if it's too hard, it becomes discouraging. The Goldilocks rule suggests that to maintain long-term motivation, you should seek out challenges that are just slightly beyond your current capabilities. This ensures that you stay engaged and continue to grow without becoming frustrated or discouraged. Clear also discusses the importance of measurement and tracking in habit formation. He explains that what gets measured gets improved, and by tracking your habits, you create a feedback loop that reinforces your behavior. For example, if you're trying to build a habit of running, tracking your distance, time, or frequency can help you see your progress and stay motivated. The act of tracking also makes the habit more tangible and concrete, making it harder to ignore or neglect. Finally, Clear introduces the concept of habit reinforcement, which involves rewarding yourself for completing a habit. For example, you could create a reward system where you treat yourself to something you enjoy after completing a habit for a certain number of days. This provides an immediate incentive for sticking with the habit and reinforces the behavior over time. The key takeaway from this section is that by using advanced strategies like habit shaping, segmentation, and reinforcement, you can refine and master your habits. These strategies help ensure that your habits are sustainable and scalable over the long term, allowing you to achieve your goals without becoming overwhelmed or discouraged. The role of mindset in habit formation, the growth versus fixed mindset. In addition to the practical strategies for habit formation, Clear also discusses the role of mindset in building and maintaining habits. Drawing on the work of psychologist Carol Dweck, Clear explains the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset and how these mindsets can influence our ability to build habits. A fixed mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence are static and unchangeable. People with a fixed mindset tend to avoid challenges, give up easily, and view failure as a reflection of their inherent limitations. This mindset can be detrimental to habit formation because it leads to a fear of failure and a reluctance to try new things. In contrast, a growth mindset is the belief that our abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort, learning, and perseverance. People with a growth mindset embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, and view failure as an opportunity to learn and grow. This mindset is essential for habit formation because it encourages resilience and a willingness to keep trying, even when progress is slow or difficult. Clear explains that adopting a growth mindset can help you build better habits because it shifts your focus from outcomes to effort. Instead of worrying about whether you're naturally good at something, you focus on the process of improvement and the small steps you can take to get better each day. This mindset fosters a sense of curiosity and experimentation, which makes it easier to stick with new habits, even when they're challenging. Clear also emphasizes the importance of self-compassion in habit formation. He explains that being kind to yourself during setbacks is crucial for long-term success. Instead of beating yourself up for missing a workout or slipping up on your diet, practice self-compassion by acknowledging that setbacks are a natural part of the process. By treating yourself with kindness and understanding, you reduce the likelihood of falling into a negative cycle of self-criticism and defeat. The key takeaway from this section is that mindset plays a crucial role in habit formation. By adopting a growth mindset and practicing self-compassion, you can build the resilience and persistence needed to stick with your habits over the long term. This mindset shift helps you focus on the process of improvement, rather than the outcome, which leads to more sustainable success. The long-term impact of atomic habits, compounding over a lifetime. In the final section of the book, Clear reflects on the long-term impact of atomic habits. He reiterates that small, consistent actions have the power to create extraordinary change over time. By focusing on systems rather than goals, building identity-based habits, and using the 4 laws of behavior change, anyone can transform their life, one small habit at a time. Clear emphasizes that the power of atomic habits lies in their ability to compound over a lifetime. Just as compound interest accumulates wealth over time, habits accumulate progress in every area of life. Whether you're trying to improve your health, career, relationships, or personal growth, the consistent application of small, positive habits leads to exponential gains over time. Clear also reflects on the broader implications of habit formation for society as a whole. He explains that habits are not just about individual success, they also have a ripple effect on the people around us. When we build good habits, we inspire others to do the same, creating a positive feedback loop that spreads through our families, communities, and workplaces. In this way, habits have the power to create a better world, one small action at a time. Clear concludes the book by encouraging readers to embrace the philosophy of continuous improvement. There is no endpoint to personal growth, there is always room for further refinement and improvement. The goal is not to achieve perfection, but to consistently make progress and evolve over time. Ultimately, Atomic Habits is about more than just habit formation, it's about designing a life that aspirations. By harnessing the power of small habits, you can take control of your life and achieve lasting success. The key is to focus on the process, trust in the power of compounding, and remain patient and persistent in the pursuit of your goals.